Hey, welcome back. Today on the channel, we're going to be doing some research, but not just any research, deep research. That's right. Today, I got to try out the new OpenAI deep research functionality, and you might want to know, like I did, how does it compare to Gemini's deep research feature? Who's deeper, this guy or this guy down here? So everyone that tries out one of these deep research agents probably comes with their own unique background, their own niche use case or task that they want to complete. And the question or the prompt you give to it needs to be pretty deep and interesting enough to waste time using this type of computational power and spending 20 minutes or 30 minutes to come up with an answer. Don't just say how's your day like you would do with a chatbot or ask it some simple Googleable question, right? And so my test here was to have it analyze a niche market of lesser known private companies in the IT and cybersecurity industry. Now you might ask, why is that a good test of a deep research agent like this? So I had a few reasons why I think this is a great test of its capabilities. The first reason I have is data scarcity. So I'm asking about private companies that people don't talk about very much. So everyone's talking about NVIDIA and Microsoft and stuff like that. I've seen people test it out for that, but that information's everywhere. It's publicly available. It's in SEC filings, there's earnings transcripts. The CEOs of some of these companies are like tweeting all the time, appearing everywhere. Whereas in the case of these private IT companies, the data is relatively scarce. The founders of these companies, they don't tweet. They're not delivering earnings reports all the time. They're not SEC filings with the numbers just laid out there, right? This information is scattered about. You might hear it about it in a very niche industry blog. There's information maybe on Reddit. There's information in some niche databases like Crunchbase and CB Insights and things like that. But there's relatively little data that's just public. Here's my numbers. Here's my revenue numbers, because private companies don't share all that information. And so because of that, number two, the deep research agent has to collect the sparse data from different places and has to kind of fill in the blanks and tell the story itself, right? And so that's kind of a test of, is this intelligent? Can it go deep and find these little niche pieces of information and then weave a coherent story and fill in the numbers that are missing? Maybe look at some public comps or figure out a cohesive story from not very much information. Another way I want to compare these deep research agents is seeing how they weigh different sources of information. So for instance, Reddit, is that a credible source? Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. In some cases, Reddit can tell you how the end user is feeling. There's little niche subreddits where users of these products get together and discuss what they really think and share the things they're frustrated with, and you can get an idea on how they feel about customer support, how they feel about the way this company is running, things like that. In some cases, Reddit is just a bunch of nonsense and teenagers talking about whatever, right? So it depends the industry you're talking about. Secondly, sometimes there'll be an industry, some blog that you think is some general industry blog, but if you actually look into it, the blog is actually owned by the company that it's writing about. So sometimes a company will sponsor content or the company actually owns the blog itself. And so you don't know whether that blog is a reputable source. Another thing is that if you go to some of these niche databases on private companies that talk about funding sources and have some type of revenue sources, if you've ever invested in a private company, you'll know that a lot of times that information is either inaccurate or completely out of date. So they'll report on something like 2 years after it actually happened. So that data is not always a reliable source. How does the deep research agent handle that? The fourth reason this is a great test for me is that it tests the contextual understanding of these niche markets and jargon. And so in the IT and cybersecurity market, I'm looking at terms like, or acronyms like RMM, MSP, PSA, BDR, EDR, XDR, MDR, MDM, NOC, SOC, ITSM, and things like that. And it's hard for people to get those things straight a lot. And if you've ever homegrown and coded your own RAG system, retrieval augmented generation, to find similarities in text, chunk up text, and then weave that all together somehow into a cohesive report, that can actually be very challenging to get right. And what I'm finding is these deep research agents have kind of solved the problem for us. The fifth is I like how evaluating private companies involves predictions, right? And so a lot of, we're not just testing fact retrieval. Anyone can just retrieve facts and regurgitate them onto a page with some bullet points. But what's interesting here is that with incomplete information, it has to somehow fill in the blanks. And also I'm asking it to make predictions about what's to come. So based on limited knowledge, what is the trajectory of these companies over the next 3 to 5 years? What is the market share of these private companies going to look like? Who could be a possibly an M&A target? Who might be acquired? What is the IPO trajectory? Will some of these companies IPO in the next few years? Is the deep research agent able to figure this out based on these news sources and social media posts and little niche databases scattered all over the web? So that's why I think analysis of private companies is a great test of these deep research agents. So how did I actually test them? Well, first, I wrote this very long prompt instructing each deep research agent to create a detailed 6-part report on the state of the RMM market. And so you'll see right here, I have the exact prompt I used. You'll see it is quite long. It's like 60 lines right there. And this is the markdown version of it. And so I'm having it write a research brief on RMM software for the MSP market. Why this market? Because I've actually worked and spent 7 years working on code in this industry. And I've also made an investment in this industry. So I follow every single piece of news that comes out about this topic and have met some of the founders of these companies and things like that. And so I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to analyze the output of a 30-page report on this particular topic. So I tell it to compile a comprehensive report on the state of the remote monitoring and management software market for managed service providers in North America. The report should be structured for an investor evaluating opportunities in this space and should include detailed market analysis, financials, competitive landscape, and strategic insights. Take as long as you need. It's important that we get all of the most up-to-date and detailed information on the topics below. And whatever market you're interested in, you could easily swap that out and tell it to write about your market. Now you'll see I provide the exact structure of the report. So I want a 30-page report and I want 6 different parts, each with several different subpoints, right? And so I give it the overall objective at the top, and then I give it the scope of research, and then each of the 6 parts. So I have 1 part for the market overview, 2nd for financials and valuation, 3rd is the competitive landscape and key players, 4th I have investment and market accessibility, 5th, product and industry trends, and 6th, strategic outlook and predictions. So the first thing you'll notice here is I didn't actually name any companies at all. I want it to figure that out for me. I said, analyze the current state of the RMM software market for MSPs, estimate the total market size and expected growth trajectory over the next 3 to 5 years, provide a market share prediction for the key players. I didn't mention any company names. Secondly, under financials and valuation, I said identify revenue figures for each major company in the space. Note that is not public information. I want to see if it can figure it out. Secondly, I said analyze the growth rates in any available SaaS metrics, ARR, churn, NRR, CAC, LTV, etc. Provide valuation estimates for public and private companies. Find and list publicly available comps and multiples for valuation comparison. Under number 3, competitive landscape and key players, I said profile them. I want their founding history, when they started, who leads these companies, what is the ownership structure, are they owned by private equity, are they founder-led? I wanted to track recent acquisitions, who acquired who, how are these acquisitions funded, what do these acquisitions indicate about the company's overall strategy? Investigate leadership changes. How has the C-suite changed? Are there any new board members or people that have departed or any key executives that have changed recently? How might these changes impact each company's trajectory? And then I also wanted to identify the current sentiment around each product, gather insights from niche subreddits, MSP-specific forums and review sites, and industry publications. Under investment and market accessibility, the 4th section, I wanted it to identify if there are shares in these companies. If I want to invest in one of these companies, are the shares available for purchase on the secondary market or through other investment platforms? Determine potential acquisition targets and possible acquirers. Outline funding sources for key players, VC, private equity, debt financing, and provide IPO predictions for private companies in the space. Number 5, I wanted it to write me a section on the product and industry trends. So first, the AI question, identify AI use cases in development within this space. So what are these companies doing with AI? Secondly, I wanted to explore trends in cybersecurity and growth opportunities tied to MSPs and RMM software. Third, I wanted it to review expansion efforts. So how are these companies integrating and forming partnerships with other companies? Are companies entering new markets? Are they releasing new products? Are they becoming multi-product companies? Are they hiring for roles that suggest new product development? What current job openings do they have? And what do those job openings reveal about their roadmap? And then six, and finally, strategic outlook and predictions, which I found very interesting. I said, who is poised to win or lose in this market, and provide key predictions for 2025. Because who doesn't like a big, bold prediction? And are these deep research agents, are they willing to make a big, bold claim that might be untrue, or will they just dodge it and be completely unuseful and say, I cannot provide information, I can't speculate, right? And finally, at the end of the task prompt here, I specified report format and delivery. I said, present the information in a structured report format tailored for an investor. I said, provide charts and visualizations. I don't think it could do that yet. I said, cite sources for all data points, especially revenue figures, valuation multiples, and sentiment analysis. And I said, highlight key takeaways and actionable insights at the beginning of the report. And so that's the task, that's the prompt I gave to each research agent. Now, how did I judge the output to see which one was better? Some people like to just use these little benchmarks with tables of numbers of which is the best. But in my opinion, the best way for me to evaluate my specific task is how well it solves my problem. Use my own specific background. So the first test was me as a human judge, and my second test was using LLM judges. So having OpenAI o1 Pro, Claude Sonnet, and Gemini 2.0 judge the output and have them grade those reports. So as a human judge, I read through both reports. It's like a 30-something page report from OpenAI and like a dozen or so pages from Gemini. And I'm someone that worked and invested in this space. And so I followed it closely, and I feel like I'm qualified to evaluate its output. And how did I evaluate them? For length, structure, correctness, ability to fill in the gaps, depth, inconsistencies, errors of omission, insightfulness, and their ability and willingness to make bold predictions. So that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm testing them on. And for our LLM, our non-human judges, I gave them a prompt. I said to evaluate and compare two investment reports, evaluate their accuracy, depth, analytical rigor, clarity of each report, identify the strengths and weaknesses. And then I gave it a bunch of different metrics and categories to evaluate them on. What are the notable differences? Which one captured certain facts in its report that the other one didn't? Which has conflicting or inconsistent facts? Who has a better narrative structure? Depth and quality of research, investment-focused analysis, competitive landscape and strategic insights, use of AI and emerging trends. Lots of different things. I asked it to test sentiment analysis, clarity, readability, and organization, predictive accuracy and forward thinking, technical accuracy and data integrity, strengths and weaknesses of each researcher and LLM. And then I gave it the reports as if they were written by a person. I said, report number 1 by Greg Gemini, gave the full text of the reports, and then report number 2 by OP1, OpenAI o1, deep research, right? And so I gave it both reports and said, write a detailed grade of each of them and which one would you work with? And so that they weren't biased on their own output, right? OpenAI grades both of them. We have Gemini grade both of them. And Claude Sonnet grades both of them, even though Claude Sonnet doesn't have the deep research mode here. And spoiler alert, the human judge, me, and all of the LLM judges here all agreed unanimously that the OpenAI deep research agent it outperforms the Gemini report dramatically. And what I'm going to do now is go through each of these reports, hopefully not talk forever on them, but point out specific reasons why the OpenAI report is better. So I went through this line by line. You see in highlighted in green here, everything highlighted in green is stuff that was better about the OpenAI report, more accurate, additional information it included that Gemini did not. You'll see if I scroll through this, there's a lot in green there that was interesting and useful that Gemini did not pick up on. On the Gemini side, you'll see in orange here, I highlighted some things that were either inaccurate or wrong, and also highlighted in green things that were picked up on by the Gemini report that were not included on the OpenAI report. So first, let's look at the structure and the length of each of these reports. On the structure, you can see that I clearly defined the structure in the prompt here. So I mentioned that there were 6 distinct parts to this report. So you'll notice 1, 2, and 3 here: market overview, financials and valuation, and competitive landscape and key players. If I look at the OpenAI report here, you see I have a market overview, a financials and valuation, and I have competitive landscape. So it follows that, 1, 2, 3. Now, if I look at the Gemini deep research report here, you see that it gives the competitive landscape and key players first, then financials and valuation, then market overview. So you see it didn't quite follow the order that I asked it to. So I give that a point for OpenAI for following the exact structure, because I thought putting the overview first made sense, right? Secondly, let's look at the length of each report. If I look on the Gemini version here, you will see under tools in Google Docs, I have a word count, and you see it says the word count 2,940 words, about 3,000 words and 10 pages here. The OpenAI version, if I look under tools, I have 15,000 words and 33 pages. So 5 times as many words and 3 times as many pages. So is that good? Does size matter? As we all know, size sometimes does matter, right? Sometimes you want a little more substance and depth. And I find that the OpenAI version wins this category because there's lots of depth that I've highlighted in green all the way through that I find to be actually important information for evaluating the state of this market that Gemini just leaves out altogether. It gives very high-level bullet points, and I find for something called deep research, I want it to go deep and give me as much information as possible. This isn't high-level overview research. This is deep research. And so another point already that I give to OpenAI here. Next, let's go through at a high level, at least, the each of the sections of this report. And I'm going to point out a few specific things on each version of the report. So the first, let's look at the market overview and the key players. Which companies did each of these models or these agents identify as the key players in this particular industry? If I go over and look at Gemini's report here, you'll see it identifies the top 5 players here, and it picked the companies ConnectWise, Kaseya, Enable, NinjaOne, and Atera that all dominate the market. And I agree that's a pretty good listing of 5 key players. You'll notice, though, that it writes key player profiles for each of the players it chose here, right? And it lists 4 of the ones it chose and listed. But you'll also notice one of the key player profiles here is called Manage Engine, and that's not in the list of key players identified. So why did it include a profile for Manage Engine, right? And secondly, notice that I asked about this market in North America. Manage Engine is a division of Zoho Corporation, right? And Zoho Corporation is based in India, so not exactly a North American company. Maybe Manage Engine has a headquarters in North America, but I still think that's a little bit off base here. On the OpenAI side, you see it mentions all of the key players here. And if I look down in the competitive landscape, you'll see that it gives me extreme detail about each of these companies. So look at Gemini's version, these bullet points here. I asked for the history of each of these companies and their leadership. If I look at the competitive landscape and the companies that it identifies, you see just for this one company, ConnectWise, or just for this one company, Kaseya, it gives me when they were founded, who is the original CEO, who is the CEO later, who acquired this company, private equity involvement by this Thoma Bravo here. It mentions a lot about how the product started and how it evolved over the time. It tells me about the leadership and the strategy of the leadership here. Same thing with Kaseya. It says it's majority owned by Insight Partners, so that's a very important distinction here. And it talks about other backing investors, and it shows that they've had a very acquisitive strategy in building up their product over time. So they've acquired Datto, IT Glue, Unitrend Spanning, Connect Booster, SaaS Alerts, etc. And so it does the same thing for every single company that's listed here. So all 5 of these major players. As part of this competitive landscape analysis, I asked about the market share of each of the companies it identifies. You'll note that under Gemini here, it lists the key players and some market share. So it talks about ConnectWise here being the leading player in this particular market, despite their market share dropping, and Kaseya being number 2, Enable being number 3, and NinjaOne being number 4. So this mentions Q2 of 2024. So that information was correct as of Q2 of 2024. Now, while that information is correct in Q2, it's not correct as of Q4 of 2024. So you'll notice on the OpenAI side, they pick up the same article, right, that shows the current market share leaders, so ConnectWise, Kaseya, Enable, NinjaOne, and others in that order. But you'll see down here, it picks up that the market share shifted as of Q4 of 2024, and it picks up a follow-up article here that it links, and you'll see that Kaseya became the number 1 player as of Q4, and then ConnectWise lost its leadership position, and it shows NinjaOne moving up as the 3rd player in the market. So it's very important to get this current market share dynamics down, and OpenAI correctly identifies how it's changed over time, whereas Gemini used an old snapshot of the state of the past, which isn't as relevant to me now because it's now February of 2025. So how could Gemini Deep Research actually provide some type of trajectory or prediction of market share for the key players like I asked it to, if it's looking at Q2 data and not detecting that the order of the current market share leaders has shifted over the last 6 months? Secondly, I had a section on financials and valuation. So what kind of information can you find about the growth rates of these companies, various SaaS metrics, their revenue, and so forth, even though they are not public companies? Look at what Gemini said here. So it got some growth rate figures for a few of the companies here, and it got a few valuation figures. So ConnectWise estimated between 6 billion and 8 billion. That seems to be right. Kaseya estimated to be valued 12 billion, NinjaOne 1.9 billion as of February 2024, and Atera 500 million. And I think these are all based on either private equity acquisitions and their most recent round of venture funding that is listed on public websites. And so I think that answer is okay from Gemini. And then notice under SaaS metrics for Gemini, unfortunately, detailed SaaS metrics such as ARR churn, NRR, CAC, and LTV are not available for most of these companies. It's important to note the MSP industry generally exhibits high customer retention rates with an average of 90%. It basically says, there's not a lot of information out there. What can I do for you? Now let's look over at the OpenAI side and see it's able to write a very lengthy valuation and financial section on these companies, and is able to even write a whole section on SaaS metrics. So you'll see, rather than just saying no on SaaS metrics, it's able to fill in the blanks and determine a lot of details. And let's talk about how they were actually able to do that. So if I look at financials and valuation, you'll see it sees that Kaseya acquired Datto in a $6.2 billion deal. So it knows information about Datto, which they acquired. Datto was formerly a public company, and so there was information about Datto's revenue in 2020 and 2021 and its growth rate. So it's able to pick up some information from there. On ConnectWise, it's able to pick up some information from when it was acquired by a private equity company years ago, and based on its current market share, it's able to extrapolate what its current revenue probably looks like today, and it talks about its growth rate. And then under Enable, remember Gemini identified Enable as one of the top 5 vendors, Enable right there, but didn't mention anything about Enable. Well, Enable is actually a public company under ticker symbol NABL, and so you can get full transparency on those numbers. And so it picks up, OpenAI goes, oh, well, this is how much revenue Enable had, this is how much its growth was, this is its Q3 earnings, and it's able to look at that information that's publicly accessible. And Gemini, despite identifying Enable as a key player in this market, didn't even bother to look at the revenue numbers for Enable that were publicly available. Another cool part of OpenAI's reports is they go through each company. So they spend roughly a paragraph on each individual company and each bullet point. And at the end of each of these sections, it does a quick summary here. So you get the best of both worlds. If you want the depth, you get that. But then it says to summarize key player revenues and estimates here, and so it provides a quick bullet point list of each of these companies. Next, OpenAI writes an entire section on SaaS metrics here, and remember, Gemini said, unfortunately, there's not a lot of detail available, and so it's like, I can't do anything for you. Here, look at what OpenAI is able to infer. Well, since Kaseya acquired a public company, Datto, it goes back and looks at Datto's latest earnings when it was a public company and incorporates what Datto said in their earnings. It says Datto had over 18,000 MSP partners, had an average ARR per MSP of $35,600. It was growing 11% annually. It's able to look at Enable, which is a publicly traded company, so it's able to get this net revenue retention number here and says it's been slightly above 100% and get some growth figures and some information about its customer base. Ninja One, it mentions that it's a hyper growth company and they want to invest more in support than a typical B2B SaaS company. And so it's able to infer from Ninja One's strategy that it might have strong metrics. And so it says this strategy likely yields customer satisfaction retention, translating into strong lifetime value. Also, it mentions that they haven't invested a lot in marketing and their growth is driven by positive word of mouth. So they probably have a relatively low customer acquisition cost. And so even though those numbers aren't exactly just published somewhere, it's trying to infer some information based on the company's strategy. Likewise, under Kaseya here, it says this company has been described as a sales machine. And so if you go on their subreddits for this, you'll see that a lot of people are upset about their aggressive sales tactics. And so it picks up on that and talks about how they often cross-sell a lot of different products in their portfolio. And so obviously from this, you can infer that they do a lot of upselling that helps growth, but also that comes at the expense of customer goodwill of people that don't like these aggressive sales tactics. And again, from that, after bullet pointing each of these companies, it does a summary of the SaaS economics of this niche industry as a whole. And based on what it learned from Enable, which is public, and Datto, which is public, it's able to kind of gather some of these metrics for us. And if that wasn't enough, it writes a whole section on company valuations, public and private, and talks about the public comparable of Enable, writes about recent M&A valuations. So Datto was acquired at approximately 10 times ARR when it was acquired. It talks about recent bids. It talks about recent venture capital and growth equity activity, and it talks about comparable multiples. And overall, you can see how OpenAI's agent here attempts to actually do the task we asked it to and assembles all these small bits of information and infers things, gathers information from the public market, and puts these together into a story, even though we didn't have any details to actually provide it. And Gemini just didn't try very hard for us. All right, so this is getting kind of long. I could actually talk about this for several hours. So I want to go ahead and skip these two sections, which aren't quite as interesting, but OpenAI does a much better job on. I'm going to jump straight to the strategic outlook and predictions, which I think is an interesting test here. Now let's look at Gemini's answer in this section. It says the RMM market is expected to remain highly competitive with ongoing consolidation and a shift towards platform-based solutions. Companies that can effectively integrate AI, cybersecurity, and automation are likely to be winners. Under key predictions, it says continued growth in the MSP market, increased adoption of AI-powered automation, greater focus on cybersecurity, more businesses moving towards cloud setups, and ongoing M&A activity with potential IPOs and some privately held companies. Conclusion, it represents a compelling investment opportunity. Call to action, you should consider a diversified approach. Super boring. The most generic, oh, this is going to grow, could be compelling, you should diversify to protect yourself, etc. No bold predictions here. Look at what OpenAI Deep Research did here. It gave a prediction for each and every one of these companies. We didn't even ask it about these companies specifically. It determined the key players and gave predictions for each one. So it wrote a paragraph on each one and how it might play out. And so the first one it lists is Kaseya. It mentions how they bought an arena. So FTX used to be the crypto company. They owned FTX Arena. They went under, and then Kaseya bought the arena. And you see how Deep Research put this together and said, since they bought the arena naming rights, that might be a high-profile marketing play, suggesting Kaseya is raising brand awareness, which could precede an IPO in late 2025 or 26. So note, it's willing to speculate here and even willing to give me a possible quarter or year when this could occur. And then it also says that they expect Kaseya to highlight their growth and profitability at scale and selling points to public investors. And one thing to watch, any IPO will require Kaseya to address the negative sentiment issues openly and risk factors and showcase strong security measures given the 2021 breach history. So it says, what should you highlight and what risks should you address to have a successful IPO? Secondly, it does one for ConnectWise. It mentions they have solid recurring revenue numbers and could pitch themselves as ServiceNow for MSP. So it talks about how these companies should pitch themselves in an IPO filing. And it says it's a mature platform. However, it has slow growth, which might be a concern, and how it might attempt to get growth back by winning some market share back. It says an IPO in late 2025 might be plausible if they can show an uptick in momentum. Otherwise, it's just going to be a PE, a private equity to private equity sale. So it says ConnectWise is one to watch for a liquidity event in the coming 1 to 2 years, but it probably won't be in the form of an IPO due to its low growth rate. Just like I asked in the prompt, OpenAI lists exactly what it thinks is going to happen and predicts for each one of these companies what they're going to do in 2025. Kaseya gaining further share, Ninja One continuing to grow. Predictions, so it does a bold prediction for each one of those, including, so it mentions what the market share will be. It predicts Ninja One to double its customer account in the next 18 to 24 months. And then it discusses ConnectWise and Enable and says they're at a crossroads. So it says these are incumbents that have solid bases, but are having slower growth right now, and what they might do to try to improve their growth rate and their current trajectory. It writes a full section on continued consolidation M&A, and you note, bold prediction. At least one or more notable M&A deal will occur. This could take the form of private equity firm acquiring ConnectWise if Thoma Bravo decides to sell. So straight out makes a prediction. And then once again, final predictions for 2025, key events that it thinks it's going to occur, how the market share is going to continue to shift, and how the customers of these products are going to approach their tools, and writes a long conclusion. So very, very impressed with what OpenAI has done here. Seems to be an amazing product. Now, based on everything I've said so far, you might think that OpenAI got every single thing right and that Gemini didn't pick up anything that OpenAI didn't pick up on. But there are two facts here that Gemini picked up on that I think are very important that OpenAI didn't capture in its report. What are those two items? Well, there are 2 bullet points that happened in January 2025, just a few weeks ago. So I'm not sure if this is related to a knowledge cutoff or not. So what Gemini picked up on is that Ninja One acquired Dropsuite in January 2025 to add data protection to its endpoint management platform. And so there's a whole section on company strategy that's in these documents. OpenAI has a strategy on backup and data protection, but it didn't incorporate this recent information of January. Does OpenAI not have it? Did it just search a snapshot of the information? I'm not sure. Secondly, key leadership changes. So Fred here, this guy, he stepped down as the CEO of Kaseya. So the market leader, as of a few weeks ago, stepped down as CEO. So big leadership transition that happened a few weeks ago that OpenAI did not pick up on. And if you look at the OpenAI report here, it says Kaseya leadership stability. Kaseya's executive team under Fred Vokola has remained relatively stable through its integration of Datto. So as we know now from Gemini, that is incorrect. There was a leadership transition. And so one thing to keep in mind is what is OpenAI doing something where it missed a couple of key January facts. So in order to determine whether it's due to a knowledge cutoff issue, I asked Deep Research directly to write a report just on the company Kaseya and key leadership changes. And you'll notice it does pick this up in this report. It says, after nearly 10 years at the helm, Fred Vokola stepped down as CEO in January 2025. So it's able to get that information. So I'm not sure why it excluded it from the report. It could be either one, I asked it to do so much at once and it wasn't focused, or number two, maybe for speed, it looked at a cached copy of the internet and didn't actually reach out and search what happened in the past few weeks. Whereas this one, maybe since I asked directly about it, maybe it triggered it to use a tool to search the freshest copy of the internet or the live internet. I'm not sure what triggered this, but it clearly can use tools to find out this recent information. So one way you might want to get the best of both worlds is to kick off an initial deep research report to get the key players in a particular industry, then chain that to another set of tasks. So identify the key players, and then for each key player, write a deep research report on each one. So you see, I have just a report on Kaseya here, and wow, OpenAI wrote a giant report on it. It contains all the leadership changes. It has a section on each different acquisition they made. So lots and lots more detail if you want to go even deeper and deeper on leadership changes, their strategy and position, challenges and controversies. It talks about the cyber attack on Kaseya software, customer and cultural relationship issues, and cites all of that. And so you don't just need to use one of these models in one report. You could get some things from Gemini, some things from OpenAI, and then kick off more and more tasks until you get the level of detail you want. And you could produce a 1,000-page report if you want to. So in my humble human judgment opinion, OpenAI, it's a slam dunk, much better than Gemini for the particular use case and report. I had it right. What do the judges think? What do the LLM judges think? So Claude here graded both of these. It says for investment purposes, report number 2 provides more actionable insights and better strategic analysis, making it more valuable for investment decision making. It says, while both reports have merit, report number 2 edges out report number 1 for investment purposes due to its superior strategic insights and actionable insights. It does say that report number 1 is a good comprehensive reference document. So if you just need quick bullet points, and it says you could weave these together. So remember, you don't need to be a fanboy of either one of these. We can use these as steps in some type of pipeline and maybe say combine these into the best of both worlds. Likewise, OpenAI here graded both reports. It says that report number 2 is more exhaustive. Report number 1 is easier to navigate quickly. Report number 2 has more forward-looking analysis and market share predictions and IPO speculation. Report number 2 wins in citing MSP forum data. It says report number 1 has some promising opportunity section, but report number 2 shows clear valuations and M&A multiples for deeper investor context. And it says overall, the all-in-one resource with deeper nuance, report number 2 is stronger, but report number 1 is more streamlined. If you want brevity and immediate bullet points, report number 1, but maximum depth, including AI trends, sentiment analysis, leadership changes, ongoing consolidation levels, report number 1, which is OpenAI. Report number 2 is more comprehensive, forward-looking, one-stop shop. Since it's deep research, I feel like exhaustiveness is more important here. And then finally, even Google's own Gemini Advanced thinks that the OpenAI report is better. Both offer valuable perspectives in the RMM market, but Juan's report provides more comprehensive investor-focused analysis with actionable insights and stronger predictive accuracy, in-depth of research, clarity presentation, and focus on key market trends. It makes it a more valuable resource for investors evaluating opportunities in this dynamic sector. So there you have it. That's my first experience using each of these new deep research agent products in my particular area of interest. Your mileage may vary, but in my opinion, from evaluating this, OpenAI's version is much better so far, and the LLM judges agree. But as usual in this space, it moves quickly, and I expect Gemini to release a better version of the deep research agent that they've provided, and they will only continue to get better. But already, I'm completely blown away with what we have here, and if development stopped today in February of 2025, I already foresee this causing dramatic effects in the industry as a whole. You know, I see all these Substack writers selling paid subscriptions, and there's very few of them that are better than what this provides at $200 a month. Anyone that, if you're in the selling financial reports business, you could be in trouble unless you're you need to be exceptionally good, exceptionally insightful, and need to weave together, some very detailed analysis to provide any kind of edge here, because this is just that good. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.